We are back with the DNC convention, night one.
Let's dig a little deeper on what to expect. We are joined by our KTLA 5 panel of political analysts, political consultant Matt Klink, civil rights attorney and policy advisor Sonia Diaz, and political policy expert Kerman Maddox. Nice to have you all here with us. Let's just get right into it. You've been hearing it all day, the unconventional convention. And we're also hearing President Trump, who's also in Milwaukee today in person, saying that, well, you know, a taped or recorded Michelle Obama is not nearly as exciting as, you know, what this convention used to be, with it all being virtual now in 2020 due to the pandemic. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's going to be a challenge, clearly, because the Democrats have to figure out a way to make the messages compelling, because usually you feed off the energy of the crowd and the signs and the noise, and you don't have anything like that. So that's their biggest challenge. And obviously, I'm not paying any attention to President Trump. But when I see the lineup of speakers, I really like the fact that the Democrats have pivoted to the middle. And tonight is the night for the moderates. And I think they're going after suburban women. So I think it's going to be compelling. And I like the fact they've pivoted to the middle already.
Sonia, to you. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Kerman.
No, I just said I like the fact they've pivoted to the middle already. And anytime you use Michelle Obama, I don't care whether it's live or on TV, she's going to be compelling. She's got magic, and she's going to light up Democrats. All
right. To you, Sonia, typically you see a post-convention bump for a candidate if things go well at the convention. Obviously, this is a whole new ballgame. It's all virtual. Can they generate excitement?
I think that's precisely what they're trying to do this evening. And today's the first shot by having the most important and popular person in America on stage, and that is First Lady Michelle Obama. That said, there's a play by the Democratic Party to really get some energy from battleground states. We have Senator Catherine Cortez Masto from Nevada to really mobilize the Latino vote. We also have important figures, not just from Milwaukee, but we are thinking through other people in Minnesota, like Senator Klobuchar, that can speak to women's issues, and to Kerman's point, the moderate view. That said, the superstar, Senator Bernie Sanders, is hitting the stage because, again, tonight is about party unity. And VP Biden and Senator Sanders have brought the party together to think through a concrete party platform that can speak to so many issues that Americans care about today.
Matt, let's talk about, we know that Sanders is speaking, Cuomo is speaking, you know, the luminaries of the Democratic Party, if you will, but we also have a Republican speaking tonight. Let's talk about John Kasich and what he brings to the table on day one of the DNC.
Well, John Kasich, this is a gentleman who, member of Congress, chairman of the Budget Committee. He was there for the Gingrich Revolution in 1994, two-term governor of Ohio, who probably could not win re-election in Ohio right now. He is a polarizing figure in the Republican Party, but he will speak to that moderate Republican who is frankly just plain old upset and frustrated with the human EKG machine that is the Trump presidency. And he's going to talk about a more stable time that we can move forward without the caustic rhetoric and the finger pointing and constant blame game that we've seen for the last 4 years.
Sonia Diaz, Matt Klink, Kerman Maddox, good to have you. We'll see you again next half hour as our coverage continues and throughout the night, covering night one of the DNC. Thanks for being with us. Deeper dive into this first night of the Democratic Convention. We're joined once again by our KTLA 5 panel of political analysts, political consultant Matt Klink, civil rights attorney and policy advisor Sonia Diaz, and political policy expert Kerman Maddox. Good to have you with us. Matt, let me start with you. Tonight you have represented large and politically distant factions, from the self-described Democratic Socialist in Bernie Sanders to not one but four Republicans speaking on behalf of Democrat Joe Biden. I think the most important takeaway from all of this is the question and eventual answer of whether Bernie Sanders can convince the Bernie bros to pitch a tent in the Joe Biden camp. What do you think, Matt?
Everything that I've heard Senator Sanders say indicates that he will tell his people to unquestionably back Joe Biden, that Donald Trump is the threat, and contrast this sharply with 2016, where his people just couldn't let go. I think this time they will say, we've seen the effect of what happens if we don't come on board. So think of tonight as a way of taking the extremes of the right and the left and working their way back to the middle over the next couple days for Joe Biden and the Democrats. That's what tonight is about.
Sonia, 4 Republicans speaking on behalf of a Democrat tonight. What do you make of it?
You know, I think that that's 3 more than we have on the debate stage tonight, the convention stage for Latinos. And that's frankly a shame if we think through what the opportunity here is for the party to mobilize voters of color, particularly 2 groups for which there were Democratic candidates during the primary, Andrew Yang and Julian Castro, and making sure that communities see themselves represented. I think that the running mate pick of Senator Kamala Harris is definitely doing a lot of wonders for the Democratic Party, both in terms of fundraising, but representation. I want to get to Matt's point about Sanders. I think that Sanders did come out for Secretary Clinton in the 2016 cycle. The difference today is making sure that there is a clear threat, as Matt mentioned, which is Donald Trump remaining 4 more years in the White House for this country. And I think that's emblematic of where the nation is, irrespective of your political party, based on the coronavirus pandemic. We know that the Democrats are trying the persuasion game and really trying to persuade voters, those who voted for Trump in 2016, to vote for VP Biden in November.
Kerman, it would appear from the Democrats' perspective that President Trump himself is proving to be the most important coalition builder for Biden and his team. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the Democratic Party is much more united this year than they were 4 years ago. The acrimony that existed between the Sanders campaign and the Clinton campaign just doesn't exist here. Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders get along well. They've worked together on the platform. And I think even though progressives were not excited about the fact that Kamala Harris was selected to be on the ticket, she clearly was not their number 1 choice. The one thing Democrats want more than anything else, Micah, is they want to defeat Donald Trump. So it's not a time for purity tests. And I think progressives before the end of the day are going to jump on board. I think the Democratic Party is going to be united because Donald Trump is the gift that keeps on giving. And Democrats understand the most important item to them is to get rid of Donald Trump. So I expect this to be a unified effort all the way up until Election Day.
All right, Sonia, Matt, and Kerman, good to see you once again, and we'll be back with you throughout the night as we continue our coverage of the Democratic Convention.
So let's begin our KTLA 5 panel of political analysts.
Political consultant Matt Klink, civil rights attorney and policy advisor Sonia Diaz, and political policy expert Kerman Maddox. Good of you to be with us. Kerman, let me start with you as we await Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. He will be speaking in large part to that group of young voters that make up a broad section of his faction. What will he be telling them tonight to convince them to vote for Joe Biden?
So I think his message to the young folks is going to be that, the current president of the United States is really in their way. He's dangerous to young people. I think the message is, if he's on board and he's got all these creative ideas and he's a part of the Biden team, I think he has such credibility with young people. I think some of the young people who aren't motivated right now by the Biden campaign are going to be motivated by a message for Bernie Sanders. Now, they're not going to talk about the Green New Deal and Medicare for all and all that other ideological stuff that's so important in the primaries. But I just think fundamentally him being on stage communicating to those young people is going to be enough to get them excited and motivated, because they're not excited or motivated right now to get out there and do some work because of the threat Donald Trump is to their future. That's what I expect Bernie Sanders to talk about.
And then, of course, Michelle Obama being the keynote speaker for tonight. Sonia, what can we expect from her? Attacks on Trump? And also, do we expect her, as we would think, to mobilize women and minorities to vote for Joe Biden?
I think the First Lady is one of the best surrogates any campaign can have with them, especially in this very important time where Our nation is in chaos, not only with the coronavirus pandemic, but also with worsening inequality. The First Lady's message is going to be to get out to vote, which it always has been, but to double down on what's at stake. One of the things that the First Lady has been very clear about in her new philanthropic endeavors is the role of the Democratic Party in providing support for working families, for children, and for women. We know that Black women are the linchpin of the Democratic Party. We also know that people like the Vice President's running mate, Kamala Harris, will help energize some voters. That said, I think that the First Lady is really going to provide that stewardship and that support based on a very deep personal relationship with VP Biden, and that goes a long way.
All right, Sonia, thank you to Matt and to Kerman. We're going to stand by and listen live now to Gretchen Whitmer speaking.
Let's listen in. The governor
we can accomplish anything. After all, democracy is a team sport.
And it's fascinating to watch as we bring the panel back in, just how this unfolds. I mean, none of us knows what to expect around the next corner with this convention. Matt Klink, as you know well, no two election cycles are the same, particularly in this total mess of a year, challenging even the most well-honed political instincts. These campaigns forced to rewrite entire chapters of their playbook with potentially enormous implications. What do you make of it?
You know, the campaign that adapts the best to the circumstances is ultimately going to prove triumphant in November. And right now, I have to tell you, Micah, the Joe Biden strategy of being sequestered in his basement and controlling pretty rigorously the engagement with groups and with the news media, it's paying dividends because Donald Trump has always been his own worst enemy, and he keeps, opening mouth and inserting foot on a regular basis. Now that's going to have to change. He is going to have to go out and actually take real reporter questions at some point, but right now it's suiting him well. You know what? One thing I'll add, and then I'll turn it back over to my colleagues. Donald Trump has a notoriously thick skin. He's going to get beat up something awful between now and Thursday. So it could be pretty ugly for him. So he might want to turn off the Twitter for a while.
All right. Well, we've got that part. And I think that what's interesting, though, if you've been watching the convention for the last hour, 9 minutes that it's been on, is just how short these speeches are. And, this is supposed to energize the Democratic base, those voters that are undecided. Do you feel that that's even happening right now with this kind of presentation that we are forced to have because of the pandemic?
I think, you have to make whatever is possible work right now. And the most important thing is that people are sheltering in place and physically distancing, and that they're not in Milwaukee spreading COVID-19 as our country continues to be an abysmal failure in dealing with this pandemic. That said, some of the speeches, particularly those of non-elected officials, have been great. Kristen Urquiza talking about her father's death from COVID-19 as a 65-year-old who was in good health and blaming it on the president was really dynamic and underscores what's at stake in November.
Our panel stand by. We're going to take a short break and be back with more coverage of the Democratic National Convention Night 1 after this. Ohio Governor John Kasich, a Republican, a big name as we bring back the panel, a very likable individual speaking again on behalf of a Democrat, Kerman Maddox. Much has been made of John Kasich and his appearance tonight. What do you make of it?
So let me tell you, I think it's a smart move. The message tonight really is trying to convey a party that's united and a nation that's united. So the idea that they had a couple Republican speakers participating tonight to send that message to disaffected Republicans, independents, and even some moderate Democrats in battleground states who like Kasich are good. Ohio's in play, but the whole notion of this moderate message from moderate Democrats and Republicans, I think is a good message for Joe Biden to kind of let people know, again, the party is pivoted to the center. And there are a lot of disaffected Republicans out there. There are a lot of independents out there. And I think they've done a good job so far of going after them. Now, let me say, it's hard to replicate the magic and enthusiasm and excitement when you don't have large numbers of people there. But I think what's good about tonight so far is the messaging has been good, the messages have been good, and I think they're probably going to resonate with people. So again, you don't have the crowds, but I think what they've done on night one is pretty good.
All right, Kerman, thank you so much. And we'll get back to our panel in just a moment. We want to go to Senator Doug Jones. He's now speaking here at the DNC. Let's listen in.
Different races came together in pursuit of equality.
Alabama Senator Doug Jones. So after a string of Republicans speaking, we see a Democrat, again, a prime example of the wide swath of politically distant factions speaking tonight. Matt Klink, to you and the panel, can they come together as one voice?
Highly doubtful, Micah. And, Doug Jones is going to be soon the ex-senator from the state of Alabama. Auburn football coach Tommy Tuberville is almost certain to crush him in November. I think that they're trying to raise his profile to a national audience. But, I'm really struggling with this format. The speeches that I've seen are not connecting with me so far. Speaking like Kasich, speaking in a green field, I miss the reaction of the crowd, and I just don't know if the average viewer of these things is going to be motivated by this or turn to a rerun of something that's more interesting, because it's just not very appealing yet, unless you're a party regular, in which case this is candy.
It certainly is a different feel, as everybody's been saying, this unconventional convention as we are seeing on day one. I mean, this is going to be going on for the next, for the rest of the week until Thursday, and then the Republicans after that, who's going to have a very similar format. But, is it working? That's the problem.
Yeah.
Is you're not getting that energy, as we've been mentioning, from the people that we have seen in past conventions.
Sonia Diaz, what do you make of this? I mean, obviously, time will tell. None of us knows how this is going to be received until it's actually received or not received. I mean, you're watching this along with the rest of us for the first time. Are they breaking through? Are they connecting?
I really think that the people that are connecting with viewers are those, again, that are not holding elected office or up for re-election. These are people like George Floyd's family members who are making clear that the third most important issue to Black and Latino voters in this country, dealing with racial inequality and discrimination, is front and center, and not ignoring the movement that has brought us here to really start thinking through structural and systems change instead of where we were when the Democratic primaries started, really a spectrum from moderation and incrementalism to widespread changes, whether they were with our banking and financial institutions to our healthcare system. We're at a place right now that the DNC digital convening is really showing is meeting the moment. I agree in terms of the disjointed nature of some of the speakers, but again, there's widespread diversity in tonight's events, and we're probably going to see some of the more dynamic speakers later this evening. So I'm really looking forward to what they have to say.
And I think we should also look at some of the pros of this virtual convention. Kerman, all day today, if you are just a regular citizen, you can sign up and join some of the caucuses, things that you wouldn't have been able to do in past conventions where delegates are only invited to these special speaker events and so forth. But all day for the whole week, you can sign up for these things. And it kind of reaches, you would hope, a different audience as well, in a different way in this kind of environment that we're in of a virtual convention.
Yeah, but it's very inclusive. And again, maybe they don't have the razzle and dazzle that a lot of people are looking for. But I got to say, they're talking about things that most Americans are really concerned about. The coronavirus pandemic, that's real. Racial inequality, that's real. An unemployment situation right now, we have maybe in excess of 30 million people who are unemployed. That stuff is real. And then you talk about the fact that you have all these virtual activities where you actually can be much more involved, Mike and Cher, than in the past. They've had virtual watching parties for the last 24 hours. So you have parties, you have viewing parties, you can sit in on the discussions, the seminars.
All right,
so
Kerman, we're going to cut it short and get back with you shortly. We want to hear Senator Klobuchar from Minnesota.
Come January.
And there's Senator Amy Klobuchar, who, of course, was running, against Biden. And it's interesting to hear a live speech from this DNC. You can feel that energy coming from Klobuchar, connecting to the audience about unity and about the hardships that Biden experienced in his life and also the resilience that he has. Let's go over to our panel right now and check in with them. Definitely a different feel when you hear somebody speaking live. And it's interesting when you have her focusing on what we believe that Michelle Obama will be focusing on as well, is that Biden has had these hardships of death and in his family, and the resilience that he has as well. So touting that strength of Biden tonight.
No, Cher, absolutely. I think Senator Klobuchar did a marvelous job. And she is right. I mean, Joe Biden has been through the crucible not once, but at least twice. And he has dealt with difficulty and overcome it. I think we're seeing some themes emerge tonight, though, just steady of hand, reliable, proven. I mean, all of the attributes that the critics will say Donald Trump lacks. Joe Biden is almost the anti-Trump tonight in the way that he's being portrayed, and that's how he's going to run this campaign as well.
All right, back with the panel in a moment as our coverage of DNC Night 1 continues as we await the speech by Senator Bernie Sanders moments from now. Stay with us.
Welcome back to our special coverage of the Democratic National Convention. We want to bring in our KTLA 5 panel of political analysts.
Political consultant Matt Klink, civil rights attorney and policy advisor Sonia Diaz, and political policy expert Kerman Maddox. Kerman, we'll start with you. We just saw Senator Amy Klobuchar. She managed to survive late into the campaign, and as we've come to know from the senator, she pulls no punches. She went directly after Donald Trump in addressing the Democrats tonight.
Yeah, she's good. I mean, I really like her. And I think early on, before the murder of George Floyd, she was in real contention to be on the ticket. But actually, after the murder of George Floyd in Minnesota, the whole world changed. And you had a chance to look at her record. So she kind of disqualified herself from being on the ticket. But again, she's a senator from a battleground stage. She's a great debater. She's great on message. And I think during the course of the campaign is going to try and figure out a way to strategically use her on the stump, in Zoom, as a message carrier. And I think she's going to be really effective. And I think she appeals to a lot of suburban women in battleground states that we need to win this election.
And Sonia, that's exactly what they're going for, is the women in the suburbs and the battleground states. That's why this was originally planned, in Milwaukee. Hillary Clinton in 2016 and her campaign forgot about Wisconsin. And so they're trying to make sure that this time around it doesn't vote red, it votes blue.
Again, this is about persuasion and not expansion. It's also about elevating the role and the capacity of female leaders, particularly those in the United States Senate. Prior to Senator Klobuchar giving her live speech, we saw a taped interview from Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, the first Latina ever elected to the United States Senate, one of only 5 women of color in a body that has 69 white men. So this is really trying to do what we heard about VP Biden's search for a running mate, which is to elevate all women. And we definitely saw that with Amy Klobuchar in her Smile So Wide, reaffirming her belief that VP Biden is the best person for the job, even remarking that she was joyous the day that she said that she was ending her campaign. So all of this leads us to 80 days in counting about whether or not voters, especially those in the Midwest, are going to not only vote, but are going to change their vote for those white voters, including white women who went with Donald Trump in 2016.
Matt Klink, as we wait for Senator Bernie Sanders, he walks a fine line tonight. Obviously, no Medicare for all, no Green New Deal, but yet let's get supporting Joe Biden. How does he manage to walk that line, does he, tonight?
He's gonna have to. I think he clearly wants to bring the party together and to unify the party. And the message is going to be that Donald Trump is the ultimate enemy. And even though we don't agree, we have to unite. But there's got to be some bad feelings that he's not getting a lot of what he campaigned on. And in part because it just is not practical or possible to get anything through Congress that's that extreme. The complete abolishment of private insurance for a government-run system, it's never going to happen. At least not in my lifetime. So he will swallow hard and support Joe Biden because the alternative is what happened in 2016.
And we're standing by. He should be speaking any moment, Bernie Sanders. But here, in the state of Wisconsin that we're talking about, where this DNC is taking place, Bernie Sanders was able to capture 32% of that primary vote. So that 32% of his base, he's trying to convince now to vote for Joe Biden in November.
Sonia, I want to let you in on this before we hear from Senator Sanders. Your thoughts on what he needs to do tonight to unite? I mean, there's a lot of distance between his platform and that of Joe Biden.
I think he needs to mobilize and motivate young folks and people of color. We know through our own data and research at UCLA that voters of color, particularly Latinos and some Asian Americans, in a number of the Democratic primary contests, including Iowa, including Nevada, and in parts of Texas, overwhelmingly went in support of Senator Sanders. And where VP Biden did get a plurality of votes, it was simply a plurality in places like Florida. So Senator Sanders tonight is really encouraging voters that voted for him and are supportive of his policy platform that they need to come out on November 3rd, that there is work still to be done, and that we cannot afford to have 4 more years of Donald Trump, especially amidst growing income inequality, racial injustice, and the coronavirus pandemic that has disproportionately impacted communities of color, even here in California.
Carmen, what do you hope that Bernie Sanders focuses on when he speaks tonight? And we believe that he is actually going to speak live to the audience. What do you expect from him?
So the most important thing we need from Bernie Sanders is he's got to communicate to his disaffected progressive folks who, again,
all right,
they don't have
Kerman, you've drawn the short straw again. We will get back to you. Let's listen live to Senator Sanders.
We're facing the worst public health crisis in 100 years.